we want to talk about now is customer experience in automotive industry. Why is this topic relevant, right? Because traditionally, if you look at automotive industry, it's always been looked at as a product centric industry and not as a consumer centric industry, right? I mean, because consumer centric has always been looked at more as it's not a retail thing. This is once in a lifetime vehicle, so you go and buy the product more based on how good the product is. The customer centricity was more taking a backseat, whereas it was more a product centric view. So this was the view about a couple of decades ago. Now, with so much of things that is changing in the industry, there are three major disruptions that are happening in this industry, and these disruptions are driven by mobility. These disruptions are driven by ecosystems, wherein which all the regulations, countries looking at carbon emissions. There are different footprints that have been coming in, and more importantly, is the consumers. The disruptions around the consumers has happened so drastically. I think the original equipment manufacturers, the car manufacturers, are forced to rethink in a different fashion to say that this is an entity that I cannot ignore. I mean, this is not something that I come up with an extremely good product and I can decide on whatever I want as the price point. I could decide on whatever is the wait time, whatever is needed to buy that. Gone those days. So we're going to talk a bit only about. I think this is a broad topic by itself in terms of the disruptions that's happening in the industry, right? As General Motors CEO mentioned it, the industry will change more in the next 5 years than it has changed in the last 50 years. That's the level of changes that we are talking about it in automotive industry. Now let's only talk about it purely from a disruption through the consumer angle, which is you and I, right? I mean, so which is where this topic about customer experience become much and much relevant in the marketplace. As you look closely into it, if you go today and talk to the Maruti Suzukis of the world or the Hondas of the world or BMWs, everybody, there are three things that they are looking to achieve as their objectives. One is, everybody is looking at new lines of revenue. And new lines of revenue is where all your connected services, connected products, so on and so forth can come into. And there's age-old problem of reduced operating cost. This is in the entire product life cycle. People are looking at reduced operating cost. But the most important thing that people now talk about it is, how do I enhance customer experience? Because every touch point that you have with the customer today, the OEMs are looking at enhancing these touch points. Because when you enhance the customer experience today, I think there was a survey that was done by the American Association, wherein which one unhappy customer can affect 8 sales, whereas a happy customer doesn't go and talk about it at all. I mean, this gets completely unnoticed. But you cannot afford to do the other way around in terms of, what if during one of those touch points that it happens, that I'm not able to impress upon the customer, and they, instead of becoming an advocate for the product, they go into social media, they go into various avenues and forums, and then start talking about something that derails the market image of the company and the product. So this has been very, very closely been looked at, the enhancing customer experience. So let's look at it through two lenses, right? The one, from a car manufacturer standpoint, what are the things that they wanted to do as a part of enhancing customer experience? One, if you look at today, if you and I, if we decide to buy a car, gone are those days we just start directly going into a showroom, and then look for pamphlets, look for brochures, and then talk to some of the guys, and then come back and do those research. Today, everything starts in multiple different platforms, right? People can look at in their favorite review sites. People can start looking in social media, Facebook, Twitter, try to talk to their friends. So there are various sources in which people start trying to get information in terms of assessing what is it that, I mean, if you were to look at it, is to say that the pre-owning part of the vehicle as an awareness phase and then acceptance phase. I get to be aware of all the things that's happening. Then I get an acceptance of, okay, for the price point and some of the features that I'm looking at, these are the cars that will fit into my my selection criteria. This whole process, now the car manufacturer standpoint, they're looking at it to say that, how do I get insights into it? How can technology play a significant role wherein which I could get customer insights, because data is king. So wherein which somebody who could be my potential buyer but are not visiting my website, but are not visiting my showroom, but they are searching in different parts of it, how do I get access to that? If I get access to that, I think that is where the power of data comes in, the power of social media and all of those analytic solutions that they are looking at. Then I needed to do targeted marketing campaign to those individuals. Depends on, the specific need, the drive usage pattern, try to get more and more insights about you as an individual before they start pushing on the product. So that means the traditional way of looking at the marketing campaigns to say, okay, I needed to do print media campaign, I needed to do TV commercials and things like that. People started looking at it differently to say that while my marketing budget remains the same, how do I directly tap into bringing that customer experience, so that if the 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 campaigns that you and I get onto some of the frequently visited sites that we go in are very tailor made to what we would like to see, opposed to a generic campaign of, we have these 10 different cars, what is that you're looking at it. So data becomes extremely important. So OEM standpoint, they are looking at customer insights, they are looking at digital marketing. They're also looking at to say that, how do I completely change the experience of somebody buying it, which means that can I offer a virtual showroom type of a thing, particularly during the COVID days where people were looking at online vehicle sales, right? I mean, this is not something historically has been done, because car is something, your next biggest thing next to the home that you're buying. So people always wanted to have a touch and feel, look and feel, go and smell the new car, do whatever it is. I think that is changing to say that, how do I set up a virtual showroom type of a thing where I can use technology and give the exact same amount of experience, maybe through holograms, maybe through the high resolution images, a literal 360 part of it. Those are all the things that gets happen from the original equipment manufacturer standpoint, so that the experience is so good that you would wanted to buy those type of vehicles. And this extends into the aftermarket space as well, right? There is this big thought, this is a separate discussion by itself, in terms of the role of the dealer in the future, right? When you have a virtual showroom, everything is becoming direct communication. Do we really need a dealership? In fact, when I was talking with one of the clients who's a digital client who wants to get into this industry space, they were saying that, Shri, I mean, we wanted to get into this EV space, but we do not want to set up a dealer network. We wanted to have in every mall an Apple type of a shop where somebody can experience it, and then if they wanted to test drive it, we will send the vehicle to their place. And so this whole experience is very digital driven, very unique experience, and very much enhancing that and driving you to say that, I wanted to be associated with this brand. So these are all things that are happening from a OEM standpoint. Now look at you and I as consumer standpoint. What is changing? The consumers are becoming more and more aware that the OEMs are doing it. The consumers are aware that the choices is unlimited. Now, many of the studies are saying that the consumers are looking for new ownership models. People don't want to go with the traditional ownership model of I get myself associated with one vehicle and then I just buy it, where vehicle becomes the center of it for everything that I do. It becomes more like, if I have a multiple ownership model, maybe a subscription model, maybe not a leasing model, but more of a subscription model based on my usage. Maybe I get a different vehicle for a different purpose. Over the weekend, I would want to have a bigger vehicle. My Monday through Friday, I become only a commute to office, and hence I need a smaller type of a vehicle, a compact vehicle. So what sort of things that can be done where vehicle is not the center of it, it is mobility at the center of it, and I get to do everything with my mobile phone. All of us would want to do that, and that becomes a completely different paradigm in terms of ownership of vehicles. So you no longer can associate yourself to say that I buy this vehicle, I needed to have it for a longer period of time. So that's a significant paradigm shift from a consumer standpoint. The second paradigm shift that's happening from a consumer standpoint is people buy products today that is associated with a social cost. So there is more and more millennials are associated with anything that has to do with a good cause, be it with an environment. So that is where, while there is a regulation that forces the industry to go into EV and other spaces, I think the millennials are looking for, even in any product, right? I mean, even if there is a product that is being sold, even if it is a slightly higher price, but if it has got a cost associated with military, if it has got a cost associated with something to do with social responsibility, I think there are more and more affinity towards those kind of things, and hence reducing carbon footprint, the whole image of the organization in terms of this corporate social responsibility, not just something every organization does as a corporate social responsibility. I think it is completely changing the way that consumers are looking at it right now. In summation, if you look at it, if you put these things together, one hand side that the consumers are becoming more and more empowered, the consumers are dictating on how it needs to be, and OEMs are receptive to some of those things because they have to be in this space. So the future of it is, there are big ifs are being questioned, which is the role of dealers, the role of the brand. As subscription model comes in, what would be the role of aggregators? What would be the role of individual car manufacturers? I mean, will we get into a mode where customer experience is the heart of it, like the airline industry? When we travel, you travel with the airline company, you don't care about which aircraft you go in, right? You don't care about whether it is Boeing or it is an Airbus or it is a Bombardier. It is all about the experience that it is. I think that is the fascinating change that is happening. I just wanted to leave out with some of these thoughts because in the interest of time, but happy to take some of these questions. But this change is real. This change is happening, and I'm sure you are seeing it as well. And if you fast forward a couple of years, I think the amount of change that we are talking about is something that we have unheard of in the last couple of decades as well. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Happy to take a couple of questions and share some perspectives. Bharati, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sriram. We have questions.
Yep.
Let me just quickly read them out to you. First question is, do you think the subscription model of automobile usage is going to be the norm of the day?
The answer is definitely yes. In the long term, the answer is yes. But it is going to be a phased transition from country to country, right? Some of the matured countries, if you look at it, Europe has already started piloting it in some fashion. And some of the big car manufacturers like BMW, Daimler, they themselves wanted to come up in this space. So it is going to start with the developed countries. And then when it comes to countries like India, Brazil, some of the developing nations, still vehicle is associated as a status symbol on many instances. So I think the ownership model of I own this will still stay. Maybe the urbanization, it will take first precedence, but eventually this is the way forward. But there is a whole host of things that needs to be associated with this as well, because when it comes to subscription, people want all sorts of information to be tied up to it, right? So for example, if you have a Spotify membership today, and if you rent an Uber, you don't have to listen to any music. You can play your own playlist in that Uber actually. So there are these adjacent things that are getting merged in. So if I go for a subscription model, I want all of my health records, all of those records to be there so that I get to use this. So there's a whole adjacent industry that will come into play.
Thank you so much, Sriram, for answering that question. Our second question is, how is the automobile manufacturer today going to embrace the new technology of environment-friendly automobiles, retaining customer experience and utility?
Yeah, I mean, this is already happening, right? I mean, because if you look at the mega trends in industry, if you look at it, people talk it as CASE or ACES, which is connected, autonomous, sharing, and electrification. Those are the four major trends that are happening. We know about connected because all of us wanted to have some connected car, mobile you can control. Autonomous, big question in terms of what level of autonomous that will have. Sharing, ride sharing is something that has taken a backseat because of the COVID and other things. People were preferring personal mobility. But the big thing that is happening is electrification. And all of the traditional car manufacturers who used to have internal combustion engine have this target of moving towards electrification. That is where, as I said at the beginning, the ecosystem, the regulation laws are so strict. If you have a carbon emission footprint, if it crosses a certain limit, you got to pay a penalty. And many of the companies don't want to pay penalty, but at the same time want to push more and more cars because the millennials are looking at those kind of vehicles that has a social cost. So the electrification is exponentially growing. And if you look at some of those Scandinavian countries, they wanted to be 100% electric by 2025 or 2027. So this is a phase-wise approach. Even countries like India, if you look at it, I mean, the rules of BS4 to BS6 and things like that are changing, and there's a whole host of work that is happening between Niti Aayog and others in terms of setting up charging stations, because electrification is real. It's going to happen how the UPI, the Google Pays and Phone Pays of the world picked up in the Indian market. I think that way it will suddenly explode.
We have one more interesting question. How has social media changed the way customers' buying decision?
It has changed. It has changed significantly, right? I mean, for the good or bad is up for debate, but mostly for the good, if you personally ask me. Because today, if you and I wanted something, I think our first thing is people ask in their own WhatsApp group, to say that, I'm looking to buy a car, what sort of things that it is. And then people also ask in different forums and get opinions. And these opinions are always like, there's mixed bag of it, right? Some are experts, some are purely based on personal experience. People will say that never ever go to that company, never ever buy this product, all sorts of things. So I think that is why the companies are really worried about getting as much as data as possible, because data is going to be the new oil. This is a cliche that has been used. So social media is going to play more and more and more in terms of decision making, in terms of decisions for the OEMs as well on what products to push
in. Just one last question, because I find it like very, something of relevance. Buying an automobile is an emotional and a family decision. How has technology evolved in giving the best palatable result for the customer?
Well, it's still going to be an emotional decision. I don't think that is going to change it, because see, if you look at it, I come from a small town, and even today, if I go to my hometown, if somebody wants to buy a car, there are 25 people who go to the showroom and buy a car, right? So it is like that the entire family is there. So that is not going to go away. I think what is going to go is that as people are going to look for different things in the car, right? I mean, if you ask the father who wants to buy a car, he would always look at it to say that based on some brand and the image that they already had, to say that I wanted to buy this particular one. But if you ask the son in the same family, they're going to come back and say that what sort of features does it have? Does it have a connected thing? And also there is the emotional thing is still going to say that, but there are going to be more and more elements so that it kind of ticks multiple boxes before somebody buys it. So it is not going to be to say that, so you can satisfy most of them in a way.
At the same time, we have a lot of options as well.
Absolutely.
That
makes spoil for choice. Spoil for choice.
Absolutely. Sriram, I promise that this is the last question. So, so rising cost of fuel and maintenance, rising cost of fuel and maintenance are still now unavailability of the proper. I'm not sure what that question means, but I'll try to just say exactly how it is. Rising cost of fuel and maintenance, and still now unavailability of the proper ecosystem of alternative technology do you think in 5 years things will drastically change?
I think that's a very pertinent question, actually, because see, if you look at when people buy vehicle, so there's something called as total cost of ownership, right? Today, if you buy a petrol vehicle, it might be slightly cheaper, but petrol is slightly expensive. If you buy a diesel vehicle, it's slightly expensive at one time, and then but diesel is slightly cheaper. But the point is, to the gentleman or the lady who asked this question, I mean, it is all about these costs are increasing. We got to look at alternate technology. Now, what is the biggest alternate technology that everybody is looking at is electric vehicle, hydrogen fuel, and things like that. Now, EV, the biggest challenge is how do we bring in that one-time cost is slightly higher, and then also the ecosystem, the infrastructure that needs to support onto it, right? How does this battery technology going to work, and so on and so forth. So as I said, that if you purely look at a country like India, there are a lot of things that are happening which are not known to commoners. We don't see it on a day-to-day basis. That is why suddenly it will come up. Because if you look at Tata Motors has given hundreds and thousands of EV buses to government, right? You just read it in newspaper, but you don't hear about it. I mean, slowly there is an infrastructure thing that is happening. Like if you look at BP is already talking about their existing fuel station, how do you convert it into a hybrid station, wherein which you could have, EV, because it's not going to be one fine day you wake up and then there is no petrol vehicle, right? It is all going to be electric vehicle. So I think the change is happening, but it is not visible to us to the pace that we wanted it to be, because people always look at it to say, if I buy it, I just need to charge it at my home, right? Where else can I charge? But that is why I said that all of a sudden it will explode. But predominantly for a country like us, when we take on this, I think the change and acceptance for us is we will always explode, actually. And I can promise that because I was part of another panel a couple of months back where there is a gentleman from Niti Aayog was present. He was telling about all the investments that are happening in terms of bringing down the battery cost and things like that, because that's going to be the key for people embracing this. This problem is real, but there is no one solution right now.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sriram.